Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Trick or Truth. This is the platform for decoding and exposing falsehoods and revealing the facts. Trick or Truth is an open forum for all you free thinkers and the consciously aware. Welcome to Trick or Truth. I'm very pleased today to be bringing to you someone that I have known for a few years now. It's interesting when I look back over the time that we have known each other, and I don't like to say that I've watched this person grow a lot because I think everybody kind of grows into their own skin, but I have watched him evolve in many different ways. He's very outspoken. If you've ever visited his Facebook page, no doubt you're going to witness that. So I'd like to introduce to you this evening Michael Avila. So, Michael, welcome to Trick or Truth, and tell us a little bit about your awakening, and then move on to whatever topics it is that you would like to expose our listening audience to tonight.
Well, before I say anything about me, one thing I want to say is you're going to grow up if it kills you.
And it just might.
And it just might. And I think we're seeing that all across the globe right now. It's really time for us to grow up, to wake up.
Yeah.
That's what I think. But a little bit on me. I'm a yoga teacher, definitely a yoga student. I actually kind of almost enjoy more being a student than a teacher. But I'm glad that I'm a teacher as well and can help people in that way along their evolution. I work in the jewelry industry in New York City, and I know that, you know, people can equate that with a very egotistical thing, and thankfully it isn't. I have an incredible boss, so I'm really lucky and really happy to not be in a job that really makes me feel that I'm confined, like most people have that. You know, I tell people, like, I don't know if I worked up some good karma and how I got this job, because I assure you that every previous job I hated, and, you know, inside, emotionally, mentally, had a very hard time with those jobs. And now I feel in just the right place, so thank God for that. I'm a starseed. That's one of the topics we'll get into today in the show. And so for those of you who don't know what a starseed is, you may have heard of other terms like indigo child, crystal child, or crystal children, and we'll get into that as well. But they're different from starseed. They hold a similar purpose, but to be more specific about a starseed, and this is where some people might change the channel and just think this is completely nuts. But a starseed is a soul that has been seeded on this particular planet, Earth, and that soul originates from another planet, from another star system, you know, however it is that you want to describe and define that. So, so how do I know that I'm a starseed? Well, I always knew that I was a little different than everyone else, and I think you had that feeling too, David, about your own self. So sometimes starseeds can point out other starseeds, but not all the time. I don't like to really go around doing that too much. I like people to, you know, if they hear something from me about starseeds, and people have heard things from me, and they said, oh, I'm a starseed too, and if they think so, then good for them, you know what I mean? I like them to find it for themselves, not me influencing anybody and saying, I think you're a starseed. The way I knew is that, of course, you know, I'm different. I think people see me as very different as well. Sometimes kooky, sometimes different in a really good way. I'm refreshing to them, and they love being around me.
But you also like to push buttons.
I do also like to push buttons, and that's just, we'll get into that more later. That has to do with the way my, metaphorically speaking, quote-unquote attack on how I give out this information to kind of a certain demographic perhaps. But as a child, aside from knowing that I'm just different, as a child and I didn't realize this till years later, but I would look at our solar system, maps of our solar system all the time, and I was fascinated by them, those types of maps, and I would kind of look for a planet that I could almost vibe with well. In fact, that's probably the perfect terminology, is vibe with well, because when you have a vibrational connection with something, you know something's up there. You know there's something significant anytime you have a vibrational connection with anything. But I never found it in our solar system anyway, but I was always looking for it, so I'm definitely not even from this solar system. But what I would do too is I would redraw the solar system, redraw what I saw, and then add to it, almost kind of making it up, and then deciding for myself as a 4-year-old child. So I've added this planet, this planet, this planet. I think I come from this planet that I've added on. You know, and that's what I would do. It was kind of weird, and of course, I just thought that I was, you know, looking back on it, you know, I think the average person would just think, oh, well, that's just either a weird child, or maybe not even weird, but just a child being a child. So that's one way, you know, I know. I don't know which star system or planet I come from. I get the feeling it could probably be Sirius. The star system Sirius. When I was 18, I had a reading done by my stepmom, who was very much into this whole type of thing, which I didn't even know she was. She just sort of entered my life, and we actually hit it off, and for a while I actually sort of considered her my spiritual mother in a way. And she told me that I might be a starseed. She didn't confirm that in her reading. But she had a reading done months later, and they told her that she was a starseed, that she was a light being in another place. I don't know that they gave her a place that she actually came from, but anyway, the reading confirmed that she and I were light being friends at the time when we were on that in the solar system. Again, probably Sirius, I'm not really sure. So that's not surprising to me. At the time, being 18, I really didn't think that much about it. I mean, I found it kind of fascinating, but I didn't think that much about it. And I just thought, well, like, okay, cool, okay. But yeah, she said that we had been friends, and they told her that we were friends on this planet, and that's not surprising because we had such a fantastic instant relationship. This is your stepmom. This is the person that's supposed to be, you know, the evil stepmom. And no, not at all. You know, I have 2 step-parents actually, and they're both like amazing people. So, so moving on from there, years later, probably about 2009 actually, and some of this conversation is recorded in one of the Garden Dialogue. It's from the time of the Garden Dialogue episode where we, at the time, interviewed Carrie Henwood, who did some channeling. I did not add this part in that Garden Dialogue interview because I didn't want that interview to be about me. So I edited that part out. But she had given me a reading in her channeling state. She was channeling. She knew nothing about me or anything about this whole light being business, but she also confirmed, quote unquote, confirmed for me that I was a light being. She also said it. So at first it was someone telling my stepmom that she was one and that I was one, and we were friends, and then I had someone directly telling me that I was one. So she was in a channeled state, and she was channeling apparently 7 angelic beings. And what she had said is that I was a light being, and I was constantly interacting with them, those angelic beings, at the time before I became anything so dense and physical as I am now. So, as just the Earth, this time gets weirder and weirder and weirder and weirder. And thankfully, as I grow in my own consciousness, there's so many, deja vus and things like that just really confirm for me that that's what I am. And that's why I do the work that I do,
So Michael, there is star seeds, such as yourself, and then there are indigo children and crystal children.
Yeah.
Tell our audience, what is the difference between being a star seed, an indigo, and a crystal child? And I note that, all of these have the word child attached to them. Is there a point in our life where we're no longer an indigo child, or do we become an indigo adult, or?
No, the child thing has almost nothing to do with anything. It just, the child part, or the children part, is just there because in the late 70s and 80s, when these indigo and crystal children came to Earth, when they were born onto the Earth, of course they were children. And so these children, they discovered a difference in their DNA in comparison to other children that, we would term, I suppose regular, normal children. There was a difference in their DNA, and they discovered these in those children. They'll always keep that. So the term children really has to do with someone's, probably a scientist who discovered this type of DNA. It's just the way they word it. That's all it is. But it has nothing to do with that. If you're an indigo children, you're an indigo. You're an indigo. You can say that. You're an indigo. I'm indigo. I'm crystal. If that's what you are, that's what you think you are. So, okay, they're not necessarily the same, star seeds and indigo and crystal. In fact, I'm pretty sure that they're not at all the same. The star seeds, the indigos, and the crystal do carry a similar goal of basically getting this, metaphorically speaking, or using this analogy, the 100th monkey syndrome, getting that started going on the planet. So what that is that, monkey see, monkey do. You see these people, being particularly high in consciousness, having a different perspective on war and revenge and all that sort of stuff. They have a different look on that. And hopefully we can spill that over into the quote unquote regular population. Not that they're not, I don't use the word regular as demeaning. I don't use it in that way. But onto the rest of the population. So monkey see, monkey do. One monkey cracks the coconut open and realizes that they can sip the delicious coconut water, and then the next monkey says, "Oh, I'm going to do that too," and then everyone sort of copies, and for the better of the good. And that's what they're here to do. So hopefully, we'll begin to copy these star seeds, these indigo children, these crystal children.
So they essentially, to break it down even dumber, it's like a snowball effect.
It is like a snowball effect, and interestingly enough, the Bible says, "A child shall lead the way."
Yes.
And personally, I do think that means a whole lot more than just baby Jesus. I really do.
Well, I think it may have a lot to do with when people are talking about being in touch with that inner child. So who's to say that a 30-year-old is any less a child than a 5-year-old at some points, and in some instances.
And child and children, they're good words to use because also, who's more true to themselves than a child, usually. So they're really perfect words. So, star seeds, we know their souls come from a different place, and they've been seeded here for the purpose that I was telling you about, the 100th monkey syndrome type thing. And indigo is the same thing, but they didn't necessarily come from another place. They're just here from Earth like everyone else. They just have a higher vibratory rate where the rest of their DNA is starting to turn on. So we have 12 strands of DNA. We thought that 10 of those strands were junk, and they're not. The other ones are starting to turn on. And so we're starting to see a third strand turn on, and I think even a fourth in some of these children, these indigo children. And that's the only difference. I heard an interview with an indigo children who insisted, and I personally believe that this is true. She said everyone's an indigo child. Everyone. It's just if they decided to be it or not. So in other words, maybe you weren't born one. Some of those people were born indigo children. They were just born with that third strand of DNA or fourth strand. But some people weren't, and then they just have it turned on. You know, they meditate a lot. They do a lot of yoga, and it's about turning that on, because we're coming to a point in our age where we're raising consciousness. And as you raise consciousness, it's not just about consciousness in the mind and what you think. As you do that, you are utilizing different parts of your DNA that you hadn't before, and that's how it is that they get to turn on. We have to sort of milk that. We have to sort of take that to the nth degree. Do more meditation, do more yoga, and help to turn it on. You know, we do have the age on our side, because this age is about consciousness. We do have that on our side, but we have to work with that and actually turn it on. We have to turn it on, and again, by the meditation, by the yoga. And there's different things that you can use to do that. There's binary beats. Have you heard of binary beats?
Oh, yeah.
You can Google binary beats and see what that's all about. And it's kind of like,
You can find those on YouTube.
you can find binary beats on YouTube, and it's basically a type of meditation using sound. I'll just say that much. Frequencies, yeah. And just for the sake of the show, though, you know, you can Google that, but we'll move on from there. So, indigo children are the in the late 70s and the 80s, when the kids started being born onto the earth. There's the feminine version of these types of children with the third or fourth strands of DNA, and those would actually be labeled or termed indigo. And then the masculine version, which would be called crystal. So what's the difference? Crystal, a lot of them come from China, and the reason that they come from China is because that is where one of the chakras of the earth is right now. The chakras could be in different locations on the earth depending on the current positioning of the earth. And right now, since the last pole shift, right now one of the chakras is in China, so a lot of them are being born there. And they are a lot smaller in quantity than the indigo, because they're masculine energy. So right now the earth is going through a phase where it's balancing its masculine and feminine energy out, because the world is very masculine right now, which is very dangerous, which is why we have all this stuff going on, the war, and we have that war mentality and stuff like that. So we need to, as far as those crystal children are concerned, that masculine energy of this new type of DNA coming in, that needs to be lessened and limited. We can't have too much of that. But we still do need it. We still do need it, because those particular one, unlike the indigos, they have certain, literally, powers that the others don't have. So the best way I could describe it is that, you know, mothers are very nurturing. Like if you look at a husband and a wife, mothers are very nurturing. They're not so much about doing, they're just there keeping the vibe just right, so that, you know, dad can go out and do work and do more labor and stuff like that. So the crystal are more about the labor, and they're doing a lot of spiritual labor, so to speak. They usually have super psychic powers, telekinesis, they can move things without touching them, that type of thing. And they're here to help us get through the next pole shift, whenever exactly that's going to be. And so then you have the indigos. They represent the feminine energy, and they don't necessarily have these type of extreme powers, but everyone's psychic, really. All you have to do is get in touch with your intuition, and if you want to let that grow, again, meditation, yoga, that psychicness will start working for you. But they represent the more feminine energy, where they're just sort of there. They're not really doing work in terms of tangible physical work like the crystals are, but they're doing the work of keeping that vibrational tone and setting throughout the planet as best they can, keeping the almost like an ice skating rink nice and clear, so that the crystals can speaking in analogy, skate on the nice smooth ice and do the work that they need to do.
So, would it be fair to assume then, between the indigo and the crystal children, they're basically preventing or actually speeding the pole shift? Because you have the masculine and the feminine energy, obviously creating some level of balance going on there.
Yeah.
So, would you say that they are actually speeding up the pole shift, or they're actually holding it at bay, or?
Oh, that's a good question.
Well, we can come back
I
to that.
don't. Yeah, you know, we can come back to that in overdrive. I'm not too sure about that. I haven't really researched that, and I never really thought about if anyone's trying to hold it at bay or speed it up. But I do know this: they're trying to get us prepared for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure. They're trying to get us prepared. Get our consciousness prepared for it. The crystals also, they definitely have activated Merkabas. And this is something that we can get into later. What is their Merkaba?
Merkaba.
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 Yeah, some people call it Merkabas, some people call it Merkabas. There's different ways of saying it, and what it's really there for. The Merkaba is it's a shape basically that it's energy. You can't see it, at least not in this dimension that we're in. It's kind of like your aura. It's not your aura, but it's kind of like an aura where you can't see someone's aura, but we know everyone's got the aura around them. It's kind of like that. And the Merkaba represents a state of consciousness that's high enough where you can have that activated. Again, yoga and meditation. You don't know. A lot of us don't know if it's on. I don't know if it's on for me. Could very well not be on for me. I don't know. We don't know if it's on, but we definitely want it to be on, because if and when the next pole shift happens, whenever it's going to happen, what happens during a pole shift is that there's usually approximately 3 days of darkness. And it's not that the sun and the moon don't exist anymore, or there's some sort of eclipse happening where you don't see the sun and the moon. We're actually going through this magnetic field. That's what's going on with the Earth when it does the pole shift. It goes through a magnetic field, and then it makes it appear as if everything is dark. So you see everything as completely dark. Mm-hmm. No sun, no moon for approximately 3 days. I think the last one, to be technical, is 2.5 days, but it could be slightly different for each pole shift. And with this next pole shift, thank goodness, because some pole shifts it could be the opposite. But with this pole shift, it's actually this particular one is set to raise the consciousness of the planet. So that's a good thing. We still need to help it along by consciously, purposely desiring our consciousness to be raised and practicing for our consciousness to be raised. Again, meditation, yoga, can't say it enough. What happens is, though, if you don't have this Merkaba turned on, your memory's going to be wiped. And you're kind of going to start from square one.
When the pole shift happens.
When the pole shift happens. Your memory's slowly going to wipe. This is why...
Like an Etch-a-Sketch.
Like an Etch-a-Sketch. That's a really good analogy. And this is why, because once upon a time, humanity did know every life they had, because, we don't have one life, we have many lives, which basically are sort of a blueprint for our, the different levels of consciousness that we've been through. So imagine you get so high in consciousness, you don't have your Merkaba turned on, and swipe, that's it. You lose your consciousness. And this happens to humanity once upon a time. And we had to start from the beginning. And we're going to get into, when we do overdrive, because I think we're going to do some overdrive, right? Mm-hmm. We'll get into the human history and Earth's history and stuff like that. When these people didn't have their Merkaba turned on, and their memories got swiped, and we basically were all cavemen. We had to start from the beginning. So.
Wow. Doesn't sound like a very bad place to start. So, thanks so much for coming on and being my debut guest on Trick or Truth.
My pleasure.
Michael Avila can be found on, of course, his Facebook page. You can also find him at youtube.com/michaelsyoga, which is where we'll be posting the overdrive of this particular cast. And also, later on, you'll be able to find uploads of Trick or Truth at youtube.com/Garden Dialogue. Again, Michael, thank you so much for coming and sharing all of your knowledge with us.
You're so welcome. And if you do want to get onto my Facebook, it's facebook.com/MikeGoGetter.
Okay, Trick or Truth?
Trick or Truth.
I'm a yoga teacher, a yoga student, an individual, a person who cares about what's going on in the world right now. Especially right now. I'm a button pusher. You can tell that on facebook.com/MikeGoGetter. I like to share and spread information. You can check some of that out at youtube.com/MichaelsYoga. Do you think I have some things to say? Well, I do. Check me out on David Vernon's premiere episode of Trick or Truth, hosted by David Vernon himself. I promise I'm gonna be good. Yeah, right.
Michael Avila is my guest today, and this is what we consider overdrive. You know, Michael, I'm an avid follower of stuff that you put up on Facebook a lot, and a lot of the topics that you choose to talk about are what I would consider very out-of-the-box topics.
Yeah.
And one of them that I'm always interested in hearing you talk about is evolution and human origins.
Yeah.
It seems to be something that you enjoy talking about quite a bit too, and you seem to have quite a plethora of knowledge about it. Why don't you share some of that knowledge with our listeners? Would you mind?
No, not at all. Be my pleasure. Well, you know, I've always been really interested in this stuff and evolution and the beginning of our origins. And if it were up to me, I'd know the beginning of everything, but that's impossible. You know, let's just stick with the planet Earth. What a lot of people don't realize is that, because, you know, a lot of people who are of one of the Abrahamic religions, you know, they consider the whole Adam and Eve story the beginning and things like that. And it is a metaphor for the beginnings of our human origins, but we can go back in time even further than that and go to origins of the earth, which include other beings that were probably the original earthlings. We think of ourselves as the original earthlings, but we're basically genetically modified, which we'll get into that. And people, of course, think, you know, whether they think Adam and Eve or whether they think the Anunnaki created us, they think the beginning is there. It's not the beginning. It was millions and millions of years ago. There were other things going on here before that. Everybody knows about the dinosaurs. So we'll kind of start there. Really the first race to be here were the reptilians. And this is
like lizards and snakes.
Yeah, but also the reptilian people, the reptilian race, who some people think that they're a part of the world globalists, the elites, the people who are sort of behind running the world. That's possible. I mean, I hear that there's still reptilians existing underground working with the U.S. government as well as other governments underground, especially in Dulce.
But they were the original race, the reptilians.
Well, they were the first people. They were the first people to come to Earth, and you know, I can't say that this is 100% true. But then again, that's not necessarily what this show is about.
Right.
It's called Trick or Truth, and there's two things about that. when it is true, I definitely tell you, hey, this is true. There's plenty of this to back it up. Even if it's not popular, there's still plenty of evidence to back this up. And sometimes, I'll be honest with you, I don't know if this is absolute truth or not. I know that there are...
Well, that's the trick.
And that's part of the trick.
Yeah.
You know, do your own decoding, do your own work. Does it sound real to you? Does it not? Don't let it not sound real to you just because you're another puzzle of society, though. You know what I mean? Just because you think like, you know, every other John Doe. You know, if it doesn't sound true to you, really have it not sound true to you because that's what you really feel in your heart. Don't do it just because the guy next to you says it's not true and you're following something else. Do you know what I mean? You're following.
Well, that's
someone.
where the truth lives, is in your heart.
It's in your heart, and a lot of people, they don't know that. They're too busy, you know, watching a Lady Gaga video and trying to imitate whatever she's doing, and
which would be reptilian again. Back to the
speaking of reptilians, there are a few people who I got this information from. One of the sources is Alex Collier.
Oh yes,
he's one of my favorites.
Yeah, me too.
Alex Collier tells this story, and they came here, the reptilians, actually from another universe. They actually got kicked out. That's a whole other subject right there. You know, we think we're the only universe, and every universe has its own thing, has its own theme going on. This one in particular is our theme, the way we do things here on Earth, and well, that's actually a little different. The way we do things here on Earth is our particular that's our theme. You know, this whole thing with the wars and the manipulation of the population, that's our theme. Other planets don't necessarily have it that way. But in general, that's our theme. And then also the universe on its own has its own theme as well. And, you know, I think that the general theme of the universe is just higher consciousness. Is just to raise consciousness. You know what I mean? In general, even if there are beings of an extremely high consciousness, wherever they are, they're still, even though they don't have all this, you know, Illuminati, war, deaths, and bombs, and all, even though they don't deal with any of that, they still have a similar goal of raising consciousness. We feel that we really have to do it, particularly, especially because, you know, that's how we would get out of this mess. This, you know, controlling the population, the wars, the this, the that. But these reptilians got kicked out of their universe, and they were just led into our universe, basically. And they got kicked out because they were really causing havoc. And well, now they're causing havoc here. But they're very smart, they're very intelligent, and they have some of the highest technology that anyone has ever had.
Do you know
in the universe.
Do you know why they chose to come to planet Earth?
I think they were just looking for a place to live, and Earth was very much to their liking in terms of
habitat.
In terms of habitat and just plenty of just mountains and greens and just the way you would think reptilians like to live. And also they like to be underground a lot, you know. And I think Earth back then was just a little darker. It was a little scarier looking. You know, the atmosphere was a little different. They also ate plants. They didn't just eat meat. They ate, I think, pretty much just about anything in a way. Anything that you could almost consider food. And so they came here, and they've basically been here ever since. I don't know, some of them, they come from the Draco star system, which is where they first, when they got kicked out of their universe, that's where they first ended up. And then they're like pirates. They like to travel throughout space and kind of, you know, for lack of a better term, take over planets and let that be their living space. So before anyone else. They were here. In a way, you could say it really belongs to them if you really want to get technical. So I don't have the answers to everything. I often ask myself, why are we here anyway? Why did we inhibit their space? But anyway, so evolution, this idea of evolution from Darwin, there is truth to that. We got Neanderthals from evolution. We got the Yetis or the Sasquatch from evolution. And what happened is that one day this new group of beings came called the Anunnaki. And the Anunnaki, basically, they live on a planet that is part of our solar system. We don't take that into account. It's not part of the planets that we know that are in our solar system. This other planet comes in the way we go around the sun. All of the planets that we know of go around our sun. This doesn't go around our sun. It's sort of, how would you describe that? You have a ring here and then it goes that way. How would you describe that? Would you have a description for that?
It intersects.
It intersects. It intersects, and exactly, that would be the perfect term.
It goes in and out.
It goes in and out in its own orbit, so to speak.
Which we're used to seeing our orbit as circular.
Yeah.
But the orbit of this planet, I'm assuming you're speaking of Planet X, also known as
Nibiru,
to some people.
Where the Anunnakis come from.
It actually orbits in an oval.
It's more oval.
In an oval path.
Yeah.
And it goes into the photon belt, which is where planet Earth is actually lined up. Actually, all 7 of the planets are lined up in the photon belt at this point.
Yeah.
So, so the Anunnaki, are they jumping off planet Nibiru onto Earth and jumping onto Nibiru from planet Earth? Are they going back and forth, or?
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. They, because of their technology, they can actually teleport here if they want to. They currently don't come here very often at all. They can also come, via starship when their planet does begin to intersect with our solar system. And it's said that the planet is coming pretty close to passing our planet right now. I don't know. Maybe so, maybe not. I don't really know, but there's talk about people being able to see Planet X or Nibiru on their telescopes. And then, what is it, Google Space? Google Space, you can see some strange things going on, things that the government has even blacked out. You gotta wonder, why do they black that out? Apparently, I don't think there's a whole lot of reptilians anymore currently, but apparently, there's sort of a rumor that there's a starship of reptilians headed this way, and that's what Google Space is blacking out. Again, you be the judge, but don't just turn your back away from this just because it seems insane. Do the research.
Yeah, you can find that stuff on YouTube.
On YouTube.
So what are the
Google.
Anunnaki up to at this point?
Well, let's go back into the story, because that'll help, find out what they're doing at this point. But the Anunnaki, they came here, and
about when was that, Mikey?
Oh gosh, there is an exact number for this, which I don't know off the top of my head.
That's
but
all right.
I want to say about 6,000-7,000 years ago. I could be wrong about that. I want to lean more towards 6. When they came here, they found planet Earth. They also inhabited Mars, by the way, which was a beautiful, green planet, very much like Earth. Green and blue planet. It was completely the same. They also inhabited Mars, but they did like Earth particularly. And they did see that, there was a lot of things going on here, actually. They weren't the first. They were the Sasquatch, a.k.a. Yeti. There were the Neanderthals. And there were these apes also that also evolved into, apes that eventually, stood upright, which is part of that Darwinism thing. But, there's always, in Darwinism, there's that quote-unquote missing link. And we've never found that missing link. And this is where the missing link comes from. Now, the Neanderthals and the Sasquatch, they were very powerful. They were very big. The Anunnaki were also particularly tall and large. They were very intelligent. I mean, they were a little bit also on the, they had high consciousness, but they were also on the, what's the term? Caveman side. So they're very primitive.
Barbaric.
They were a little barbaric, but they were very intelligent, and they did have high consciousness. They did, what's the word? They did have compassion. All these beings, by the way, had compassion. The upright ape, the Sasquatch, the Neanderthal, they had that. And they were not about to be slaves. They were not about to be slaves. Particularly, not so much the ape, but particularly the Sasquatch and the Neanderthal. So the Anunnaki wanted to get rid of them. And they kind of did that little by little. They got rid of them. However that may be, killing them little by little, Some of them still do exist under Earth, and that's why sometimes you'll see them pop up every so often. We don't know if it's a hoax sometimes. But anyway, they live in the inner Earth, and we'll get back to the inner Earth a little later. So then we have left the apes, which the Anunnaki were interested in enslaving. Because what they came to Earth to do, Earth was rich in gold, which is why they had more of an interest in Earth than Mars. And it's not that gold is actually worth anything, but that is where we get our value from today. This is why we hold gold and silver at such high levels of value.
It's considered precious.
It's
metal.
considered a precious metal. But it's just a metal at the end of the day. It's holding gold at that high value is a bit of it's like a tradition or almost a ritual. But it's just a metal. That's all it is. But if you know the history behind it, you'll understand why we have decided to almost celebrate it. And that has to do because they were mining gold so that they could use it to save their atmosphere. Their sun, they have a mini dwarf sun, red dwarf sun. So it functions differently from the way our sun functions and the way we rotate around it and so on and so forth. And orbit that sun, our sun. It works differently. But every so often, every few thousand years, they needed to have gold to turn it into dust, to put it in their atmosphere, so that the gold would sort of reflect the bad rays of the sun, and reflect radiation and things like that. Because their atmosphere was dwindling. They also ingested the gold, because they knew that it would help raise their consciousness. So that's something that's done in the underground today, not underground like under the earth, but in the underground, kind of new agey communities and things like that.
Through monoatomic gold.
Monoatomic gold, it's called, yeah. So let me take a sip of my coffee.
It's a process used to for human consumption to ingest gold, and whether it be a powder or even a liquid. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, and I know that you know a little bit about that. Monoatomic. This is where we get our value from gold from. So basically, I'm gonna digress just slightly for a moment. The governments and things like that, and royal families and stuff like that, they really actually think they're part of this Anunnaki bloodline. So they are basically the ones that hold gold at such a high value, which is where we get our partly where our money system comes from. That's partly where it comes from. And we know that these elites are hoarding all the gold. The Rothschilds, particularly the Queen of England, they're, you know, or the royal family of England at least, they're hoarding all the gold. So that, you know, again, this is all about connecting the dots. Connect the dots. It all, you know, how did, you know, one asks themselves, how did we get from Anunnaki 6,000 years ago to the Queen of England today? Connect the dots. That's how you get there.
Well, I'm very curious, not only for, do you think that, speaking of connecting the dots, do you think that there is more of a story here with the gold? I mean, could it be that, you know, the Queen of England is hanging on to the gold so that when the Anunnaki do come, she has something to put them at bay, so to speak?
Yeah, you know, that's a really good question. That's a really good question. I don't really know, but I think that is a fantastic theory. You know, what if they're holding that gold so when they do return,
they think they can buy their way out of
slavery
or buy their redemption.
Exactly. And, you know, it's hard to say because, you know, I haven't shook hands with an Anunnaki, but, you know...
Are you sure?
I think I haven't, you know, maybe in another life. But, you know, they're not all bad. They're not all bad. In fact, at some point they realized their mistake, you know. So getting back into this thing, into the history, they were mining the gold, and they were like, you know what, we're Anunnaki, we're, you know, it's a race that consider them, you know, they were at the height of arrogance, basically. And they didn't want to do the work. They just didn't. This is also where we got our bullshit caste system from, royalty and stuff like that. It comes from them, but it actually comes from the reptilians. So there was interaction between reptilians and Anunnaki before that, which is probably, you know, I'm sure there was infiltration going on with the Anunnaki race. I would say we're almost identical now. Society is almost identical to maybe not necessarily what the Anunnaki are today, but definitely what they were back then. Mm-hmm. We're an exact duplicate. So I have to say, as I think about that.
Same size, everything?
Not same size, because they manipulated our genetics.
Yeah.
But I would say behaviors, which I'm not so proud, I think about that actually gives me like shivers in a way. I'm not necessarily so proud of that. So people want to know how they created us. They took the genetics of this monkey. The monkey has compassion, this upright monkey. Mm-hmm. So it's like, if this monkey hadn't been tampered with, you know, we would have looked we would have looked probably similar, but maybe different as well. We certainly would have been humanoid. We probably would have been hairier, I think, maybe. We mostly get our genetics from Anunnaki. We're more Anunnaki than we are that upright ape. Mm-hmm. And the upright ape, there's actually, you know, I think sculptures of that and whatnot, sculptures of that in the Museum of Natural History. I've seen it. They have this. If you Google Lucy the first human would be basically the first ape that turned into the first version of the human through evolution. Not that, conscious evolution too, because conscious evolution goes along with as you evolve consciously in your mind, in your soul, you actually change physical form too, so it makes sense, doesn't it? But they took this ape and they mixed it with Anunnaki DNA. And the reason they did this is because they wanted to smarten up the ape. And what they wanted to do was create a slave that was intelligent enough to take orders and do the work, but submissive enough to actually be a slave. And so they created...
While being very strong as well.
While being very strong. And so they did many versions of the humans that came out kind of screwy. And they eventually created the first one that actually they found as just right. This was Adam, from Adam and Eve. So this is the first version of us. So yes, that's the beginning in terms of us, but there was a whole bunch of other things, as I said, going on before that. There was, you know, the Neanderthals, and the Lucy, first ape human, and the Sasquatch, and the reptilians came here millions and millions of years ago, and it said that I forgot to mention this, that the dinosaurs were one of the experiments of the reptilians. back then. So there's all this going on. So if you want to know really from the beginning, you'll never know the beginning, but that gives you a good start right there.
What would you say today actually holds that together? I mean, what is the most definitive thing, would you say, would identify us as still having that Anunnaki attachment?
Oh, in our DNA?
Yeah.
We have, I think it's ego. That's one of the, I mean, you always have ego. Every being has ego. Every physical being has ego. But I think the intense ego comes from the Anunnaki. And we also have, part of that ego is actually, we are part reptilian, by the way. It's because the Anunnaki are part reptilian. They literally, I don't know, I'm telling you our history, but I don't know the full history of the Anunnaki themselves. There's no real, writings on that. But they do have a lot of reptilian DNA, which is where we get our reptilian DNA. So again, I'm sure, like I was saying before, I'm sure there's an infiltration. Between the reptilians and the Anunnaki. So, and this whole thing is about infiltration, by the way. Everything about the Illuminati is infiltration. We'll get to that probably another time, another episode. But, so we have a part of our brain that is actually a reptilian, they call it the reptilian brain in science, that it is absolutely identical to the brain that any reptilian would have. Not just the beings that I'm talking about, the reptilian race, but I'm talking about the reptilians that you do know about. The salamander, the lizards out there, the snake. It's identical to those types of brains that they have. It's the same one actually, and it's an attachment to our regular brain. And it is a flight or fight type of response that we don't know how to control very well.
You mean it's the gear for flight or fight?
It's the gear for, exactly. It's the gear. That's where we get our flight or fight response. So that's one of the things.
Well, that's very reptilian, isn't it?
It's very
because,
reptilian.
I mean, if you have a snake being threatened by a human being like ourselves,
or an alligator,
the snake will first attempt to flee.
Yeah.
But then, if cornered, it will fight.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. And I've seen snakes actually eat alligators, which is kind of strange. But they're there on YouTube. They'll fight. Those reptilians will fight. The reptilians have zero compassion. They're regressive. They're not progressive. They're regressive species. They're a regressive species. Yeah, basically that's where it all began. Adam was created, and then they were, here's where I'm going to end it. They did do the slave job for a little while, but we're so much more Anunnaki than we are anything else that we, like them, like the Anunnakis, they set to work to mine the gold, and they said, I'm not doing this anymore. Well, that's what happened to us. We're more Anunnaki than we are anything else. And we said, we're not going to do this anymore. And we didn't. And also, apparently, according to the translations of the clay tablets found in Iraq, which was once Babylon, ancient Babylon, it actually tells the whole story that I'm telling you right now. And it says that I lost my train of thought here for a moment. Well, the tablet says that the creator of all got involved, which would be what we would think of as the ultimate God, the true, God consciousness. Not a man up in the clouds with the beard and all that.
Prime creator.
Prime creator, exactly. Got involved and said, listen, you started this issue with creating these types of humans. They are not to go to waste. You are not going to kill them and abolish them. They're beings just like all other beings, and they're going to have to rise in consciousness like, all other beings. And we want you to take good care of them. And because the Anunnaki were going to abolish the humans that they created because we were saying, no, we're not having it. And they could have destroyed us because they have that technology, and we certainly did not. But that's how we're here today. And so they have karma to clear up. They have karma to clear up, those Anunnaki. And we'll get into this part later, but then there are other rogue types of Anunnaki that wanted to set themselves up as gods and not raise our consciousness at all, but manipulate us, which is partly how we got to the Illuminati today.
Okay, so there's lesson 101 in evolution. So thanks for listening, and tune in again. This has been Trick or Truth. I'm David Vernon with Michael Avila. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, guys.
Blog Talk Radio.